Okay, let me just do that. Yep.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Apologies for being 1 minute late on my last car meeting as chair. Welcome everybody and welcome to our visitor today in today's meeting. Just before we commence, I'd just like to let you know that our thoughts and condolences of Garrett, and apologies for today. Very sadly, sister-in-law Rachel Davin has died as a result of a car crash, and funerals, private funerals on Friday. Our thoughts into the same to Garrett today. So just moving on, speaking is there's the summit room and I think I can see the Texas Street Market and audio visual conference. All members participating by video conference will count for the purpose of the meeting forum in accordance with the clause 25B of Schedule 7 to the Local Government Act 2002. This meeting has been live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. And hopefully today we'll have a clearer YouTube channel sound system. So moving on to A1 apologies. I have apologies from Kit Nixon, who is just landing back in New Zealand this morning, and also apologies from Gary Eames. So can I have a mover to accept the apologies? Thank you, Colin. Seconded by Alex. All in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. So, are there any conflicts of interest today? And A3 is no public participation, and we will take also there will be nothing to follow on from the actions from participation. A6 extraordinary business. Is there any extraordinary business? Seeking for myself as now and I'm so we can move on to A6. So these are the minutes that we're considering from the 3rd of August 2022. Are there any corrections that need to be added to those minutes? Okay. No.
What's happening? This spelling mistake was it?
To be continued as true means that we as a committee are confirming that our actions with regards to matters all before us is due. Is that what we're saying?
So what's your question? Are you talking about the public health students?
Yes, I am.
So that can be dealt with later. The first action is the so that's considering. So just to confirm that these are the minutes for the 3rd of August 2022. There are no corrections that are taken. Right, can I have a mover to receive those minutes? Thank you, Pam, and seconded. Thank you, Colin. And all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Right, so moving on to C1, this is the finance report. Can I have a mover to receive the report? Can I have a mover to receive the report? Thank you. Thank you, Pam, and seconded by Colin. All in favour, raise your hands. It's about today. So I'm going to get Karen to speak to this report. Just before we move on to it, though, I have been concerned about commentary in the public forum around financial matters, lack of detail and so on. And I just want to say that listening from my 3 years I believe we've had full access to all the reports I think it's improved considerably in my 3 years as chair. And so I would like to take this opportunity to remind members if they have an issue with information. We have our general manager of finance, we also have our CEO to answer any questions. So I'd just like to make a comment. So can I move them to see?
Yeah. So as we're good news, today was the draft financial results for year ending. And these are draft because they're unaudited, and until they're audited, they can't be edited. So this is to give you some visibility of the initial draft results and to explain the questions you might have around them. Basically, we have come in on target. I mean, that's the headline news, is that we budgeted a surplus of 4.4, and that surplus has come in just at $5 million. So that it's good news in terms of revenue and expenses. As you know, we also receive unbudgeted revenue from the grants, and that is offset by expenditure to manage those grants. So anything that comes in that's unbudgeted must be offset. And if there is a timing issue on those, they are moved outside of the financials. So the surplus, the report that I'm presenting today is the external view of these reports. So these are going to be summarised and will be in the annual report later once they are audited. So our budget for total revenue was 28 million, and before extra grants 4 million, that number was 29. So we came in just a little bit over in our revenue. Some of those increases in revenue were about high volume of consents and development contributions, and just general increased other revenue. Our rates revenue came in right on target at 20 million. So that's good to see those results. So overall, we received 4 million over what was budgeted, and that 4 million comes from the grants around stimulus program, the PGF, and NZLPP, which is the library. So taking into account those. Yeah. So our surplus with those budgeted revenue and expenditure items was 5.1 million against a budget of 4.4. So we have come in on target for the results to year end. Now, the purpose of presenting these draft results are simply for information only, because they are yet to be audited, and there is a governance high level report that is before you today. Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. So, if I understand this right, I think it's surplus. Could this potentially mean that there could be a reduction in next year's annual item credits?
My understanding is the surplus contributes to some underspending that has happened during the year that we carry forward, and then we reset the rates based on what our expenses are for next year.
Any other questions?
I just had not a curly one, but I was just looking at through community reserves in your report here, and I can't find we ring fence $70,000 for a fencing project that's managed by the to be managed by the community board on a sale of land in Pacific Street. I just can't find that reserve anywhere where it's ring fenced or identified where it's ring fenced.
I'm afraid I can't.
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where it sits within the accounts. However, it was confirmed by the previous CFO, Katrina Neves, that the amount of these legal expenses was certainly there. Has been raised a number of times to the community board for direction on how that might be used. And
Sure. Yeah.
no, yeah, but the money is confirmed to be sitting available for a project.
We're just finalised to know where it is.
Yeah.
And where it's something.
I may be able to find out, and I'll do a search from the email from last year.
So what would you just take into this next night to
Yeah, no, that'd be right.
see the information to all
Yep, thanks very much. They're very, very good. Thanks very much for a comprehensive.
It was the sale of main
That's it.
the Sugar Street land in 2019.
But it will have gone August, this coming through next year, it will have gone June, so it's
Yeah. And so it's just that is it's not yet really optimized, but it's very much the teaching says that is right by this process. It'll be a district wide, so it's that's very specific, but it was ring fence, for a project. I guess that the incoming community will probably be alerted to the fact that those funds are available for a project of significance, and that's what this is.
I've just remembered, I'm sorry, it took me a little while.
That's
It's within the asset realisation reserve, so the second one down on the statement.
right.
You don't usually split it out any lower than that, but I can do it.
No, it's just as long as it's, I guess, my concern was that if it wasn't specifically identified, but there's, as the CFO knows about it, then we know that thank you.
So just to reiterate, financial statements presented in this report are draft by memory. And as far as we are aware at this point, there are no further adjustments that we have to do. The financial statements presented in this report are the same that are going to be in the report. So there are formal presentation. So if there's no more questions.
Sorry, just in terms of timing for getting.
Yes, I just come.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Okay, I moved on. Yes, yeah.
I just like to comment on the summary of the investments and to reiterate that changing that authorised threshold up to 50% has certainly worked well because we had those variances that we've been giving in the past, and I think that's working well, and I'm sure that's helpful for both you and Sharon. Very much. So, please, thank you.
Actually, can I just ask a question? So we've closed our feedback access and closing it. So again, so going forward, that line item will be and presumably the interest rates.
Yes, that is the one of the things that the 50% threshold allows us to pursue the interest rates.
Okay, so and before we move on to the annual report and audit, I'd just like to say thank you to Charlie for working hard in the last 4 months and getting these numbers prepared much earlier. We're about 2 months ahead of where we were last year, so I think it's been extremely good to get these draft results out at the last meeting and structure, and then I look forward to doing the annual report workshops. So a big thanks to Charlie.
Also, Charlie.
Right, so the annual report and audit year-end schedule. So as we know, the annual report is due to be adopted by the 31st of December. We put a placeholder in the 14th of December with council to adopt it. However, there is an issue, a current issue with Audit New Zealand and being able to confirm the final audit. Now, they have said the final audit is scheduled for the last week in October, the first 2 weeks of November, so that's 3 weeks. They have since verbally said that will now be reduced to 2 weeks. I've asked several times in writing for them to confirm that the audit will still be at that time. They are unable to confirm their workforce planning at the moment due to a huge shortage of auditors and resourcing. So we wait to hear from Audit New Zealand. It's a confirmation of the final audit, which is last week of October, first week of November. However, we now know that Carterton and Masterton are scheduled after this. So we're not the only district council to be impacted by the workers' rights staffing issues. I spoke to Carterton and Masterton about it and said, well, that's a compliance issue that we may not meet government statutory requirements. And they both said there's nothing we can do about that if it doesn't happen. So it's a little bit outside of our control, other than to keep asking all the to confirm the final audit.
I think in support of that, it's we make an effort, every effort that we can to comply with legislation. However, like you say, that's the case, it's totally out of our hands. There's nothing we can do. We just have to keep asking.
Yeah, and obviously because it's the Auditor General, they would be very well with what their compliance statutory requirements.
And we have a letter from them confirming that. So
yeah, but we are being proactive by constantly asking for an update and not sort of just going, oh, there's not much we can do. So we every 2 weeks I write to them and say, what are we looking like? I mean, it's just a shame that there's no auditors.
I think it's one of the
Just wondering if there's any professional local mandate for other than New Zealand to conduct the audit. Was there permission for that for an outside organisation or agency to be able to conduct an audit?
We would have to explore those options, and we have discussed that internally. One of the issues that creates is if you go to a new set of auditors, say PwC or the like, how familiar are they with local government? And hopefully their costs wouldn't be higher, but it's possible it could cost twice as much. They will have the same resources.
Sorry, we can manage it. If your question was, can we swap out now and take the statutory time? That's no, we can't.
So there is opportunity in the future, for instance, to look at external sale in New Zealand.
We would explore those options, but I'm not sure from the statutory requirement how far we can do that.
If I could just make a comment, when I have looked at this with other councils, and particularly Wairua, they use external auditors, and my understanding is it's not a problem with that. But the comment was made from the then chair of the appointment that it was significantly more expensive. And they also made a comment that it didn't necessarily speed up the process. So you'd have to explore those things. We talked about this the other day, and I'd just like to commend Kara and the finance team because they have literally been quite assertive in trying to get our audit done. And certainly we've been moved up, we're getting Masterton. So I don't know in terms of legislation, Harry, you might know about this. I mean, would this mean a negative mark on our audit? Presumably would. And where does the responsibility of Audit New Zealand lie in this?
I'm not sure there's a statutory effect, because in a sense, the Office of Auditor General has a reporting requirement to government. And so, I mean, they were the one who had to stand up and say, we've not, and councils being unable to comply with the statutory requirement because of capacity issues and so forth. So this is an issue right across the entire country. It's constantly on the CEO's agenda across Wellington. Everyone's experiencing the same fact. One of the councils, I won't name out the region close by, has that indication they won't get their annual reports until February. So this is a national law, it's not a one.
I think Alex.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen this double training, but it's got further and further out, so I think it's really the note of the incoming council that they will be called upon to make a very quick decision on accepting prepared for that and not to be, because it happened last year and it was closely before. I understand there's even certain authorities Audit New Zealand Defence or hiring to go out in terms of this pressure. And so, yeah, we're just going to have to look at it. We're not the only ones.
So it might be worthwhile noting it in your induction for the incoming new council, and the timing of the workshop will be critical, because at the end of the day, they're probably from the time the full auditors release, there's all the annual report. It may be like a week or less for that to vote on. So I think it's early in the morning. You should get them. Did you have a question?
Yes, I do, Chair. What is the flow on effect in we resolve the officers and then councillors from the incoming council councillors having to replace things that they started to do. But what is the flow on effect for you trying to get business as usual?
So if it extends too far, then we'll be preparing our annual plan for next year. We won't get into that column of what last year's committed expenditure is. So that the year-to-year comparison comes through to actually accounts. Does it not affect through the next set of statutory documents where we prepare, if they're prepared late? Otherwise we'll be literally in a situation of having unconfirmed unaudited financials for comparing expenditure to. So yeah, it does have it on.
We are preparing as much as we can in advance of audit. So we're looking at what they asked for last year and preparing the equipment for this year already. So that when they open up they use a dashboard for us to upload the documents to. When they open that up, we should theoretically just have a report straight into their dashboard. So we're just doing as much as we can in advance with them, and we're also sorting our schedules around. So I'm already starting things for the annual plan as early as I can, so that the timing that I normally would have done that would be when the auditors are here. So I'm sort of preparing things in advance and moving things around. Yeah.
To you, then, if I can be so bold to suggest that perhaps based on the past, when the annual report has been submitted so late in time, and there were challenges around that, to get around those challenges, it might be beneficial to find out any changes that have been made to the way and summarise it in the document to make that process a lot more easy. And part of the reason we've set a workshop for a couple of weeks before the council meeting, I believe, just so that we can go through and raise any questions in advance. But those will still be unconfirmed accounts, but at least we'll get the questions of familiarity with the new councillors before they are asked to audit it. And we will then point out anything that has changed since that workshop. Yeah, absolutely. We've made improvements, lessons learned since last year. Yeah, thank you.
so through the end of the year. So in terms of criticality, all our previous audits have indicated areas from minor improvements, but never questioned any financials. So, we prepare our accounts based on the international accounting standards. And so what you have in front of you is accurate as can be done. And so all of the audit which is the same standards. So the critical thing is we're giving an early indicator for our financials so that the new council make some decisions around, say, budget expenditure, urgency, and of course people want to have as much confidence as possible in making those decisions. And so it's important that we have this in front of you today so that you're aware, so that you have as much certainty physical. But again, I just reiterate that important business never raised any issues around our financial reports, the standard of our financial being on some of our policies, and we've been actually updating those. So we've actually got a list of the improvements which have asked for financial ticking all those off so that they don't come back as an outstanding item.
And if you recall, there was some other issues that Audit New Zealand had around signing off the variable expenses as an example, and we changed that year ago. So one of those items we brought up been ticked off and resolved. So,
and just on that, Madam Chair, we went through policy updates, but also they presented a list of outstanding items recently that hadn't been addressed, so we took those off. Fairly minor things in the scheme of things, but I feel we are proactively managing New Zealand, not the other way, which was probably about started when I started. The interim audit was 3 months late by their scheduling issues. So we are well prepared for audit. It's not just a matter of getting on with it, implementing the so.
good work you've done. Thank you.
And just on that, there is a point in my report about the fair value assessment that we have been asked to conduct by Audit New Zealand. So Audit New Zealand requested around interim audit time that our infrastructure assets be reassessed for fair market value. Now, most of those assets were revalued, so we presented the argument back that it seemed an unnecessary exercise to go through. Unfortunately, Audit New Zealand were insistent that we follow the accounting standards and maintain our assets at a fair value. So we're currently going through an exercise with the valuers to look at conducting a fair value assessment of our infrastructure assets to determine if they have moved in this very volatile market by any significant value.
So when you say you're also talking about water infrastructure.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Do we, with our continued work on asset management of the condition assessment of some of these assets, does that overlay into the valuation to ensure that you're able to value it according to, there's a broken part of this, but a part of 50 years later is quite different. So how do you
So the full assessment we've done last year, so we updated the useful life of our infrastructure assets from last year based on their condition assessment. A fair value assessment to see whether there's been a significant movement and whether it needs revaluing again doesn't necessarily take a new condition assessment into account. It uses more things like the market price for yield pipes and things like that. So the condition assessment is relatively recent.
Does it take more information to come in the meantime, which might affect that value, or there's not a significant change in the asset management? Thank you.
Given that scenario, how often are we having to reevaluate or revalidate the assets, is it a yearly thing? Our policy is to revalidate those assets every 3 years. We never been asked to do this revaluation. So this is really in light of the volatile market and prices pipes going up. So yes, it's a bit concerning because I mean there's an additional cost that we need to bear up with for percentages, so that would be reflected in our budget.
Yeah, so we did try and suggest to Audit New Zealand it was not a necessary exercise at this time of year, given that we just revamped them, but we were known by the accounting standards to do the exercise. It's currently underway. We got clarity from them this week that the threshold for change is 10%. So we are hopeful because the assets were valued last year and some this year, that the change won't be material and we won't have to execute house. But we can't ensure that until they've done the exercise, which is due mid-October.
I'm sorry, I think Colin.
Yeah, I was thinking, given that their assets were only valued a year ago, surely it's just a plus or minus percentage adjustment. Obviously,
We're hoping.
Yeah.
We're hoping on it, but that they're saying that the market is so volatile.
With their assets,
They're unrealisable assets.
That's right, they are.
So we did put up a very strong argument, but
They're being big-headed.
I would prefer they concentrate on the resources for the audit.
I agree.
Well, to Gina,
Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair, also.
so
I was going to ask, what's the cost of the actual receipts for valuation? Does it normally tell you how much?
I think I popped it on the report, it's 20,000, it falls inside the delegated authority. And the report is due, it was due on the 2nd of October, but I don't think they will be due to just so busy doing everybody else's at the same time. So we're not the only council also going through either revaluation or assessment.
So just sorry, just before you out.
Just want to also just to add to the complexity, with the three orders, the initial understanding of our accounts, our debts, all those types of things, they want to have some preliminary information from December. So we've raised with National Transition Unit that we would have been asked to do this by New Zealand. It would mean that we would not be able to spend that type of time. And there are a number of other councils exactly the same position. So they included National Transition Unit. They want to do this as well. So we certainly make sure there's pressure on a number of points to make sure that this matter gets resolved.
Yeah, so that's 20, just for clarification for families, it's $20,000 excluding the useful. It's using to be,
I had read it.
It's in the paper, quite clearly, 20,000 that's used.
Chair, it's what I call an unfunded mandate government. So I think that was good. A lot of councils are now saying government can't impose about funding each of the council. So then on actually like to official.
Do you know, I mean, it just seems crazy. It's maybe.
Is there an overlay between the whole transition unit on this requirement? So
We raised that with the TU, and for the moment it's not impacting.
no, I'm going to say there's a clarity to ETU. It's what New Zealand being asked to do this to get clarity to the orders.
There's no.
I don't think so. I think it has a relationship. It's not been driven. And to make sure that every council balance sheet, they can only base off the TP and the first year of the. Okay, so
It's purely the accounting standard that they are enforcing.
Right, so you want to move on to rates, please? Rates. Yes. So, rates arrears, something we managed extremely well for the size of council. So the debt at the end of the year was 700 to 750,000, and you know, it's always around this time of year that it's a bit higher as we get into managing the debt, collecting, setting up direct debit schedules and payments. So it equates to about 8% of total ratepayers, which is a very good benchmark. There are currently 60 properties with mortgages. And of course, the advantage we have is that any mortgages on property we can add rates to in the front bank. So we're going through the process shortly where we send to the banks the rates arrears that get added to the property and to the mortgage of that property, and then we get paid in full. So that's quite a significant amount of recovery. It's 151,000 currently. So that would really put us in a good strong position going forward. And of course, we have one property that has as a waiting settlement with an outstanding balance of 10,000. So all rates arrears clearly on the decision. So generally, rates collection is going very well. My staff have had some abuses, which is quite normal, which is unfortunate, but on the whole, we are trying to manage people's positions, financial positions at times, so different reasons.
So just a quick question, when you contact people with arrears, generally you form some sort of plan about what the problem is, the significant, you know, is it forming arrears, the fact that they're being belligerent, or is it because the whole raft of issues?
Yeah, we work with them.
Yeah, so what's the trend?
The trend has been COVID related, hardship, unaffordability, and just this management lots of understanding that they had to pay. It would be fair to say it's a bit of a grudge tax for some people.
Yeah.
They don't understand why you pay rates, what you buy for that money. So it's for some people it's fine, others it's a perception. So it's a mixture of things.
Anything significant that stands out?
Just
the normal.
Just the normal. Probably hardship is probably correct a
Yeah.
little bit more than
We're seeing that obviously with that food accident and places like that. So what mechanisms do we have in place apart from then applying for a rates rebate or something? What other mechanisms do you have in place?
So we have repayment plans and remissions. Our rates officer will meet with customers in private room and discuss with them what their problems might be and come up with a solution for repayment. So it's done very much customer satisfaction level, not as here's your rates notice. But I think it highlights perhaps the increased need in communicating what rates for and why you pay them. But then for some people, it will be a tax and you won't be able to change them. So
thanks very much for your work around that, because I've heard some pretty explicit things from some people who have frustration.
Yeah, I think we do a very good job, and we're available 21 people off the street to discuss their situation. I think every council will find that service. I think compared to our student masters, I think we're in a better position as I understand.
In terms of arrears,
The percentage and the percentage on direct debits has been increasing quite substantially over the last 3 years. I think we've done a lot of work
water rates, general rates, and of course we're promoting repayment via direct debit. That's probably the best thing. And just some people simply move into the area and forget to set up a direct debit, all sorts of things. But I think we do a very good job of promoting this.
So, Brenda,
From the discussions at the table, there are processes involved for people with mortgages, which I understand. This is one way that we can work moving forward. What happens with those that can't pay mortgages? I'm assuming that next steps to
We do. We have a recovery process in place, depending on how, it's a process that's quite involved. So it's not just black and white, and it depends on the individual circumstances and what we can do to help them to get there or not. And then we will explain what we have to do. So it's a very considerate process to recover.
Through Mr. Chair, so it's also taxed, so some of us can come which historically it's massive first potential. So that's how it's secured. So the rating act is very strong against councils in terms of being able to collect its rights and dues.
A couple. I'm seeing the payment plans for 21. How many of those are because of the timing of the payments that they, we had this discussion that sometimes they might be in arrears by $20 or $30 as opposed to a significant amount of time in the payments. Is that effective here or are they in a separate category? I'm sure there's more than 21 people on the payment plans. That's
people who have got arrears of the right payment plans.
So how many people have you got on repayment or on payment or direct debits or automatic payments on a monthly basis or something? That's we've been seeing a rise in that over time and it makes your job much easier.
It is around 40%. Wow. It's much. It is absolutely, it's really, really good job.
My next question is, you mentioned carbon master, but do we have a benchmarking amongst New Zealand councils for a appropriate work normal legal arrears? No.
Yes.
Okay.
if that matter being considered confidential, other councils or forum because of their
So first of all councils have driven rating mechanisms. So you're not hearing anything that's not able to compare councils, but in terms of the level of debt that is created, basically, yes, I can assure you this is probably the very low end of what councils or legal businesses would have in terms of debt management. This is exceptional.
8% is very low.
thank you.
I think that does that conclude finance.
Just before we move on to the policy and governance report, I'd just like to say it's my last meeting as chair. I'd just like to firstly thank Charlie and all the finance team and amazing job. Always been you see the end of the phone for me, so really appreciate that. Testing targets.
As well, Chief, I appreciate the quality of the reporting and the expansion of detail. And so it's kind of been a long way.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we're going to move on. We've got it's the amendments to there. We're going to move on to the policy and governance report. So can I have someone to move to see the policy and governance report? Is there a second or evaluation? So just to make sure you're clear, the motion carried. So Amanda, over to you.
Kia. Nice to see you all. And I know we've got the new microphones. They are definitely an improvement. I don't know how Councillor Jepson is finding it, but if you keep your voices elevated, it helps us hear. So every now and again, when you turn away, a little bit hard to hear. So great stuff, though.
So, do you think it's considerably better than the previous?
I'd say it's better. I don't know about considerably. That just when you spoke then, Lee, it was very clear.
So yes, I think that's a good suggestion. Just keep looking forward and elevate your voice a bit.
Yeah, appreciated. Thank you.
Excellent. Over to you.
So I'm just our general report, nothing spectacular in this report. We've scheduled the significant risk register review program so that basically each quarter, the following meeting, we would come to FAR with a detailed analysis of the current risks and mitigations. The current focus of the governance team has very much been on induction, and I've listened very closely to some of your comments around how the annual report will be approved by the incoming council and the induction on their finance. And I just wanted to reassure, and Karen and I have been working really closely together on our thinking around this, and it's definitely one of the top priority areas for part of those first couple of months and couple of meetings, and how those induction processes will be going. We did send you all an opportunity to give us some feedback on how the governance team has performed during the last 3 years. So thank you for those of you that responded. It's been really helpful for us to, mostly it was reassuring that we were on the same page, that the things that we'd identified were things that you'd already told us, or things that we'd kind of guessed. So that feedback was really appreciated. So as mentioned, the first 2 council meetings will be very big pieces of work for us. So the first meeting is scheduled towards the end of October, and then another meeting in the second week of December, end of the first week, beginning of second week, and they'll be quite heavy agendas with a lot of stuff coming to those first 2 meetings. And we've just had an initial report writing session with staff, looking at our current template, what we might improve, and supporting our staff to write as good as reports for you as possible. And some of the feedback that you gave us in that survey has contributed to our thinking about our reporting as well. We had a meeting scheduled with LG&Z to talk about the representation review process. Unfortunately, the person that was coming to meet with us with LG&Z couldn't come because of illness in their family. That's been rescheduled for next month. We have last night put a draft representation options paper to the Māori Standing Committee, and that will come to the next council meeting next week. And we are looking at briefing the incoming mayor. That was that next piece. So the draft representation options will come to council. And so the whole process will be for the representation review will sit with the incoming council. Just a note that the residents' perception survey is being used to complete the annual report. Karen's already talked at length through the annual report. So there's a number of non-financial KPIs that get reported against as well, that largely the resident survey inform. And then the next section of the report is dedicated to the policy framework and review. So Steph has done a huge amount of work in this place that you will probably see, including the appendix, which is the policy framework development guidelines. So this is the new, I think one of the councillors, can't remember who it was, asked me if there was going to be a policy to guide, a policy for policies. And I said, yes, there will be. This is it. So this is basically the policy that, or the framework that guides our thinking about our policy design. So what is a policy? When do we decide something needs to be reviewed? when do we decide we need a new policy? When do we decide something is obsolete? And the framework that supports that decision making. Sorry, I've only got one screen, so I'm flicking backwards and forwards between the report and looking at you guys. So yeah, there's a purpose at the beginning. It outlines the framework. So it kind of says, you know, we've got national level legislation and regulation and standards. We have to do that stuff. Then we've got our governance policies, bylaws, strategies, and action plans. They're our very high level documents that the council is responsible for. And then underneath those, we have organisational policies and service delivery procedures. So that, for example, would largely fall in Paul's particular remit. So HR policies are ones that fall in those kind of spaces. So Steph has really clearly outlined that in a nice diagram, which helps. We've used the Council Mark program to kind of frame up our thinking, because it gives us a good kind of basis that has been set by LGNZ on how you might think about your policy structure. And then we've got a timetable. So basically when they're grouped up into policies, and we've got a suggested timetable for review. We've based that review noting that we kind of wanted to go for a minimum regulatory framework. So if the legislation says you need to review this policy every 6 years, we'd do it every 6 years rather than setting ourselves up to do something every 3 years or 4 years because of workload. As a very small team, basically Steph's our one policy advisor, creating such stuff beyond the regulatory or legislative framework seemed quite excessive. So we've gone for the minimum requirement by legislation rather than aiming for a more rigorous approach for that reason of resource. If we had more resource, we could do policies more often, but we have got a huge workload. Then there's a bit of a structure around the organisation policies that I've already mentioned, and then we've got our timeline for this next 12 months and at the end of the document. That's it.
Thank you very much, Amanda. You've done amazing work in this area. I know it's a massive amount of work. So just hopping around a bit, you were talking about the induction process. I know that Colin's been very keen on new members to council going to the LGNZ local finance module. I'm not quite sure what the course is called, but is that something you know related to finance?
So we've been working really closely with our fellow governance people in Masterton and Carterton, looking at what we can do together.
Yes.
And we're also working with LGNZ on what they provide. And so we haven't put any dates in our calendar for our internal induction that might clash with stuff that is being delivered by LGNZ. So we've got a really close eye on the whole picture. And when we have new councillors, they'll get a bit of a menu of things that they kind of highly recommend, and then some optional stuff. And Paul and I had a conversation this week about a broader, longer term development plan for our elected members and appointed members. So, you know, induction happens in the first few months. A lot of it's very, very intensive. There's a huge amount of information, particularly for new councillors. A lot of it's about, you know, the internal rigour of what we have to do, like standing orders and getting your head around all those kinds of things, the regulatory stuff. And we want to have a much longer opportunity, an ongoing opportunity for councils to put their hand up for development and for us to provide ongoing conversation about development. And there's a little bit of budget set aside for that as well.
And do we get some cost savings if we work with the other two councils in the Waireka?
It would all be stuff that we do on top of what we've done in the past. So yeah, absolutely. So for example, we've been talking about bringing in an external facilitator for one particular topic, and we'd split that. as long as all three councils agreed that it was worthwhile.
So I have one other question around the next residents perception survey. So that budget's still to be approved for the next survey.
So we've got budget. So because we've got a new procurement policy in place, it does ask us to go out to market. So we're being sticking to the policy and going out to market for the next resident survey. Key Research provided it to us this last time. So we will ask them to give us a quote for the next piece of research, and we're looking at a 3-year opportunity, and consideration on who's worked with us in the past and what they can provide and how comparative it is with other councils, etc., will be part of that decision making.
And when do you think that decision will be made? Got a timing on that?
Good question. I know we're going out. Steph's working on it now, so it'll probably be, I think we need to go out November, December, so we need to do it reasonably quickly.
Thank you, Amanda, very much, and well done on all the excellent policy work you're doing.
I have to say, Steph's a bit of a machine. just like Karen's got Charlie doing an excellent job, I've got a very good team of people with Amy, Steph, and Katie in this space.
So we've got questions for Amanda.
Through you, Madam Chair, from my own experience, when I started off with the community board, I found that the LG programs at the beginning were very beneficial. And again, you going through the council because you got a different element of the research. I would hate to see that go for the incumbents. One of my concerns is that the HR policies, while they are relevant for the council, the elected members also have HR, need an HR policy. So where would we go for that?
Do you want to speak to that, Amanda, or is that more of a formal question?
I think that's potentially a Paul question, and he may not have the answer to it because I hadn't thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah. Gee, thanks, Amanda. Yes, I mean, we've never had a policy of that type before. The employment terms and conditions don't apply to councillors in the same way as they did before.
No, it's not that. It's just that the elected members have a staff member, and so.
Oh, I see what. Sorry,
yeah,
yes, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would need to be worked on. I'd have to work with Amanda on that. Obviously, there's the interface with the CEO review committee and that type of thing. Yeah, so I agree. Currently, it doesn't exist, but yeah, it would be fairly straightforward. But also, from internally as our own policies around HR start to be developed, then likewise, as Amanda's already alluded to, the planning around ongoing investment in elected officials' own personal development and that ongoing piece is, it needs to be reflected probably in that set of documents as well, because it tends to be a somewhat ad hoc at the moment based on individuals' needs. I think there's some baseline type of governance essentials type stuff that needs to be done and not take for granted that people know everything.
We've been very fortunate that we've actually been that certain programs have been made available to us as individuals, so I do acknowledge that.
Thank you. So anybody else got any questions for Amanda around the table?
If I may just add one other point, I think back to a question posed in the last final meeting by Councillor Hall around emergency management as well. So part of the induction for new elected members will be around emergency management, and
there is a transitional period between mayors as well that that Amanda and I have to talk about in terms of if we are faced with an emergency situation. So that's that. The transitional period is in hand. We're very clear on what we would need to do in that space. But through you, Madam Chair, on the matter of working with other councils on areas of common interest, emergency management is one of those things where we are doing a joint introduction on that as well through Wellington Regional Emergency Management Office.
So so on that note, how many days from the end of when the election results are declared and when members are actually sworn in, what's the time?
It's very short. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a matter of days. We've actually got a report coming to council next week that looks at that interim period and delegations to chief executive and covers the civil events. So that draft will be clear very shortly.
Because it's really a severe emergency.
That's right.
I think swearing in is scheduled for, through you, Madam Chair, I'm just checking the calendar, October the 26th, is that correct, Amy?
Yes.
Cool.
So that's quite a number of days from, let's assume, not assume anything, but the election results were declared, say, on the 8th or the 9th. That's quite a long period when CG got the council.
So that is the nature.
That's the nature.
So that being essentially delegates to the chief executive to do certain things. That's things so I can't make any decision that period about significant extent.
Okay.
So those types of things. So that's key points on in delegation. I don't think it's as long as that many days. So next 13 days, just don't quote me.
It's less than 2 weeks. Through you, Madam Chair, just as a note, the delegation that's going to council meeting on the emergency management, because the mayor is the only one that can call an emergency, we would do an emergency swearing in, and then the mayor would be sworn in so that they could declare an emergency. That's the process that Taitoara and LGNZ recommended, and it's their advice that we've followed on this process.
Excellent, thanks. I think Brenda was first and then you, sorry, Brenda, Colin.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I would be so bold with regards to emergency management and how these are handled. If we have a look at recent events like the Tasman, the fire that they had to face up with, and if we have a look at Nelson, which are currently going through there, I didn't. They may be able to give suggestions on how they were able to handle it.
Yeah, quite. And in fact, I had Nigel and my team go down to Nelson. He was deployed to Nelson during the flooding to assist their recovery. An amazing learning opportunity, and he's bringing those lessons back to councillors so we can apply some of those learnings here as well.
So, Colin,
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Amanda, because one of the things that your council will be faced with, of course, is decision making, and generally from day one. And one of the things that I found in my early days of getting on council was induction overload, because you've got to absorb a heck of a lot in a very short period of time. And I'm sure that you're aware that, that councillors, of course, don't have, this is not a full-time job, it's not paid, and so a lot of new councillors may well have full-time jobs. So it's actually getting that balance right between induction overload and then being able to maintain their own lifestyle that they're accustomed to. So I'm just conscious of that, and I'm sure that you're aware of it as well.
Absolutely, that's been one of the things that I've had very front and centre of our thinking and the conversations that we've had as a team around how do we manage that. And one of the things that we really want to concentrate on, and one of the things that we're going to implement, is having a pre-meeting brief with the advisor, the committee advisor, so that any questions can be brought up in a few weeks before meetings, so that people can, ask I don't understand this process. I don't know why that we're doing it this way. And we can support with good advice in that space. So that's something we're really keen to do, that's one of the things that we're going to do, is try and build these really good relationships so that we can ask us anything about process, ask us anything about legislative requirements, ask us anything that you might need to understand about why things might get done in a certain way. And if we, every now and again we get curly questions and they're good, and we've got the backup of Taituara and LG&Z, and at times even organisations like Simpson Grierson, where we might need specific legal advice on very curly questions. So that's what those, want to really create an environment where questions are okay, and you can't expect to know everything in those first few months. Very much so.
Thanks very much for that.
Alex,
Just a comment on that emergency management, and could you just check? I think if there's an existing mayor who doesn't need to be sworn in, that there is the ability for the nearest sitting mayor to sign the declaration on your district's behalf.
I'm afraid that the situation is that no, that isn't the case. It's actually it's you walk out of one door and you kind of come back in another one. It's a situation where we need to bring the new mayor in to make a decision. This format. So
but that based on the timing of past few elections, that you have a reasonably resolved that sworn in to get one.
Amanda said the emergency swearing. Yeah. But all that advice is coming to next week.
Thank you. And so, anybody got any questions?
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you to all your fantastic team. You steered us in a very good direction, and we're really value what you're doing. Thank you very much. Well done on the strategic risk register. I think it's something that we can be proud of, that we can take over in this training, because we've worked very hard on it. So, and I think it's in good shape. Right, so what I'd like to do is move on to the action items report. Can I have someone to move that we receive the finance audit risk action items report? Thank you, Colin, seconded. Thank you, Pam, all in favour, raise your hands. Motion carried. Right, so looking at the action items report, anybody got any specifics around it? Questions?
Oh, the actions are very good. They've obviously been crossed off.
Yep.
I would just like to easily highlight as number 375, which is seeking further advice from the planning team about possibly to identify potential residual risks relating to historic consents. So I'd just like to just make sure that really continues. I don't believe there's any major issues there, but I think it would be needed to be around clear, shouldn't anything up. So has anybody else got any other comment?
Yeah, sorry, I guess I question why that detail is in there and why we actually need to do that, because of that you could safely say that anything that's been signed off historically is a risk, because it may come back at some stage. So I'm just wondering why specifically we're looking at consents. So potential residual, yes. So obviously this, I wasn't involved in this conversation, so I'm keen.
So we'll get over to you.
Yeah, so it's actually wording which probably related to an activity, it's still a historic activity, it's still there. So this issue arose about discussion about closed landfills. In our landfill that's closed, we would still have consent requirements in terms of monitoring the landfill, things like leachate and various things. So it's just the committee wanted to give us a site of where there are historical activities that still have consent requirements. months to make sure that we are watching those.
Thanks for that. Yeah. It might be perhaps for him to have something a little bit more in detail, specific detail, instead of plan for science. So generalised consent.
I see that would be expanded from just one thing, because what things like West and things like that, to meet, and sometimes for whatever reason, they may not be able to raise. So there was.
Yeah. That becomes a bigger issue there.
So we were clients, chasing services as part of this one is specifically about making sure that we are watching the things that may be
So that's like you over for perpetuity in this new kind of plans.
Well, no, I would think as long as we've got a process in place, that you can close that action. So we can say this will be reviewed in 12, then here they are, and this is the review. So we still have to.
So what we were wanting was just a list of things that
Yes.
would be also for the future, and it's very supposed to process set up to review them.
We would be required to report to the regional council for any sense any. So it just would don't take.
And you happy with that Harry's response there regarding other proceedings?
Yeah. The results are in the previous standards. So we did that in summary, so and we'll be treating people on different committees. Yes, it comes to council, they're not scared. So there was a financial risk in
Yeah, I mean, they would go through the services, choose what the compliance risk is, and then it's financial impact.
GB.
Yes, I just want to update you on action 55, which is the combined district plan financial contributions. The draft of the combined district plan will be signed off tomorrow. It will be going out in the end of October, and then there's a lot more work to be done around the financial contributions, and they will be incorporated in the consultation document. So we're working on it, and that will go out, I think, in February. I think the date is set sometime in February. So that's an update on that. So I guess you may want to just leave that there, just to be briefed as things happen.
Perhaps Harry can answer this, but with the combined district plan going ahead and costing in excess of 300,000, what is our risk of changes in the RMA requiring a full new district plan to be redone within a 1 to 2 year period?
Within 1 or 2, 0.
Okay.
0. So traditionally, the way that they're managed is you have a transitional region plan, unitary plan, and it simply incorporates the existing provisions and carries those forward until a new unitary plan is developed. And I would suspect a new unitary plan is going to be less 10 years.
Okay. Thank you, GB. So any other further comments, questions around the action?
So 3 minutes. I just wondered whether, given this action that GB referred to was to investigate, it seems that the committee's view is to put it all out together at the same time. So that action is to see where the committee's view was to bring it forward. And what you're getting is the committee's view is to put it all out.
Yes.
So I would, for my money, I think that investigation is good. And I was that.
Everybody agree with that?
Is that 50? Is it 55?
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
You'll never know. So what you going to say? Jenny, have you still got your hand up for another comment or?
Not now, I haven't.
Madam Chair, do we need to move that we close that on, or is it just part? It's just.
Could we suggest removing the sentence relating to historical activities still requiring consent? So relating to that sentence, relating to historical activities that still require consent. If we complete this, what EG land is. EG land is, for example.
Okay, so I'd like to now move on to D1, which is the chairperson report. I'd like to move that we receive the chairperson's report. Can I have some? Thank you, Matt. And all the thanks tonight. And move on to the next bit in a minute. I'm taking it that you will read this report. So the first thing I did was scope out questions for our independent member to get feedback, and it's documents here, and also we did some job description, etc. Kit has come back with his recommendations, and in discussion with Alex and Amanda, Karen, we have suggested that this report is totally will be forward to the incoming year, and they can take it on board as to how they manage that. I'd simply like to say from my perspective, I've found the addition of an independent member was a new position, newly created this training. They've never before been an independent member, and I think it's stood us in good stead. Kit, I have met regularly throughout the last 3 years, and he's reviewed publicly excluded documents, but also he's taken overarching view on a range of issues that have been discussed and that are brought to far. So I think it's been very, very good for us as a council to have that person. I'd also at this point just personally record on behalf of the CEO and the Mayor our gratitude thanks to Kit for being on our board. I think we're all aware that this is an unpaid position, and certainly he's gone to great lengths to read all the papers and broader context some of the other papers that come to full council. So he spent a lot of time, and I think we're all very grateful for that. So I'm going to draft a letter with the permission of this party on behalf of our members, the CEO and the Mayor, to get out that petition.
Yeah, no, just a quick question in terms of independent remuneration for somebody on here. Obviously, there must be a provision for that to occur for an independent person on.
Currently, it's budgeted. There's no budget for it.
Yeah, but there's nothing to stop us, I guess, as a council, for instance, remunerating it. Just
no, there's nothing to stop us, but you have to look at where it's set within the budgets. Because it can come out of operational budget.
Yeah.
And at this stage, I don't really have a clear picture of what their fee might be, but I would expect it would be somewhere between possibly 2,000 to 4,000 per meeting attended. But as I say,
so other councils,
other councils do have independent members that are paid.
That's fine. I wasn't.
So, and we did offer from the outset of pay mileage, which he declined.
That's fine. Yes.
So he saw it as part of his civic duty
Yeah.
But I think it's been a very good step in the right direction for us. And Harry and Alex and I spent quite some time discussing it before we appointed someone with its characteristics and the experience that was needed. So it's been very good.
I'd just like to acknowledge Kit's presence and well done for giving them on this. Me personally, I think it's good having that individual person available at the table.
And as I think you were aware, I would meet with Kit normally about a week before each meeting, and we would go through everything. We look at risks, we look at finances, we do a lot of details. So we also provide a room that independent extra perspective, which I find very useful. And of course, it's completely analytical. So that's another thing that is very, very useful. So on a basis, if anybody there's no further comments, what I'd like to recommend is that the independent committee member future recommendations report, which is Appendix 2, be provided to the incoming mayor for information committees to be established. So can I have a word for that? Just read it in second, thank you. And is it okay to say excellent. So, what we need to do is going to include so we're now going to move into public excluded business. And then just last off. The general subject of each matter to be considered while the public is excluded. The reason for the passing of this resolution is in relation to each matter and the specific grounds under section 48(1) of the Local Government Short Meetings Act 1987 for the passing of this resolution. This is followed. There's good reason to there's good reason to withhold which exists under section 7/2A, 7(2)(b)(2) and 7(2)(1). So can I please have someone to recommend that we move into public excluded? Pam and second, Alex, all in favour, and motion carried. So I can please have the night of stream ended and Dan, thanks for coming.